If you already subscribed, welcome back, my darling. And if you have not yet subscribed, or you're just now stopping by, then subscribe. Subscribe and join a part of the Morgan Shay beauty gang. Well, we're not really a beauty gang. We do a lot more shit over here now, so subscribe, because I guarantee we got something that you're gonna like to watch. So for today's episode 10 of Beauty and Documentary Breakdown, we're gonna break down this makeup look right here and also the YouTube documentary, This is Paris. You guys, this documentary is so good. Not to mention, you learn so much more and deeper stuff about Paris Hilton than I think people even ever thought or could have even began to think about. Just such a good documentary. I would compare it as good as Gigi Gorgeous's This Is Everything documentary, which is one of my favorite documentaries, just because of how real Gigi Gorgeous is in her documentary. Like I said, Paris Hilton is just as real in hers. So please, please, please go watch it before you watch the breakdown so that we can talk about this documentary in the comments. By the way, today is the first documentary breakdown that is going to be premiered. You can always count on your beauty and documentary breakdown to be posted on Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It will always be a premiere video so that we can talk to one another and have a discussion about the documentary. So please, 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 it's linked down below, the This is Paris documentary. Go watch it and then come back. So let's go ahead and get into episode number 10's warning. Warning. In today's documentary, This is Paris, we are going to be talking about child abuse, child neglect, also kidnapping. We're also going to be talking about a sex tape that permission was not granted for. We're also going to be talking about abuse, neglect, just physical abuse, you know, emotional turmoil, anything like this. If it's triggering for you in any way, please, please, please do not watch this video. Click out right now. If you still want to watch a Morgan Shay video, there's plenty of content linked right up here in the cards. You're not going to hurt my feelings at all if you click out now. Viewer discretion is extremely advised. This video is intended for mature audiences. Again, viewer discretion is advised. Now let's go ahead and get into episode 10, Beauty and Documentary Breakdown of this tutorial and then This is Paris documentary on YouTube. A little bit about Paris Hilton, just in case for the rare occasion you don't know who she is, which welcome back from the rock you were under if not. But Paris Hilton became very like a household name in the early 2000s for being an influencer. She is the first influencer. She was literally famous for being herself. And she created influencing. Now, Paris Hilton was not born to like a everyday average Joe family by any means. Paris Hilton was born on February 17th of 1981 in New York City, and she was born to her parents, Kathy and Richard Hilton. Now, I'm sure you may be thinking, Hilton, that's very familiar sounding. Well, of course it is, because her great-grandfather was the successor for Hilton Hotels, Conrad Hilton. And so she was the great granddaughter of him, her father's grandfather. And so Paris was basically destined to do good things. You know what I'm saying? Her family, in the documentary, you'll see videos, home videos from when she was a child. And like her nickname was Star. Her dad had nicknamed her Star. So she was a very beautiful child. Even when she was younger, she's beautiful now. I mean, can we talk about aging beautifully? Jesus. But she was even more beautiful as a child as well, and just full of personality. She loved animals just like she still does to this day. But we will talk more as we get further along. Her mom, Kathy, had big things planned for her and her siblings. She wanted her and her sister, Nikki Hilton, to be presented with grace and to just be private and just hold themselves up to like this higher standard. And Paris says from the very beginning that this was like unrealistic. Like, this just wasn't her. It wasn't Paris. You know, her mother wanted her to be this, and Paris wanted to be Paris. So I thought this would be really cool to include here. Just some quotes from Paris Hilton, quotes that she's known for. So of course there's "that's hot" and things like that. But some other quotes are, "Some girls are born with glitter in their veins." I thought that was super cute. Another one, "Life is too short to blend in." Another one, "The only rule is don't be boring and dress cute wherever you go." Those are all quotes from Paris Hilton. Now, another thing that brought Paris Hilton into the spotlight, unfortunately, was a sex tape called "A Night in Paris" or "One Night in Paris," something like that. That was with her ex-boyfriend, Rick Solomon. We're gonna get more into that in the documentary. But this wasn't something that Paris wanted. This wasn't like she went to Rick Solomon and was like, "Hey, let's make this sex tape so I can get famous." Paris was already known. It was after The Simple Life when things spiraled. So she was on this Simple Life between the years of 2003 to 2007. She was also on the Paris Hilton, My New Best Friend from 2008 to 2009. She was also had a show, The World According to Paris, in 2011. She was in the movie House of Wax in 2005. And she also had a show called Paris Hilton's Dubai Best Friend, BFF, in 2011. And like I said, she was known for being Paris. So now let's go ahead and break down the documentary. So like we already discussed, her great-grandfather, Conrad Hilton, was the Hilton Hotel magnate. He created Hilton Hotels. And in the beginning of the documentary, it's basically just a rundown of, you know, basically introducing Paris, I guess, for like people who aren't familiar with like her or her family or anything like that. And in the beginning, it shows her sitting down with, like, in an interview. And the person holding the interview is like, you know, "You spiraled this career and now you're a DJ." And you guys, she makes $1 million per DJing gig. I'm like, dang, girl, you better make your coin, sis. So in the very beginning, it's basically the scene at the very end. It's October 19th of 2019, the end of the documentary, rather. And Paris is just talking about how nervous she is. There's like something that they're about to do. You have no idea what it is, but she's super, super, super nervous. And she also says that the person that she was at the start of filming, she's not that person anymore. She doesn't even know who that person is. And I do think that that is super important to mention, just because of everything that does go down in the documentary, which of course we will break all of that down. So then they fast forward or rewind to 6 months before. They're talking about Paris and this character, basically. And Paris is like, "Yeah, that's not me. That voice, you know, that she has, the real soft type, you know, sexy voice, honestly, is what most people have made it out to be, is just like this sexy voice, you know, like, that's hot. You know, that type of voice. It's, you know, back when I was in high school, people used to call it like the Valley Girl voice, like, that's hot." So she's like, "That's not me. That's not me. That's never been me. That's never gonna be me. That's a character, a persona that I created, you know, when I first started, but it's not Paris. That's not who I am." She then starts to talk about something that happened in her childhood. And you guys, this is gonna be very important throughout the documentary, so just keep this in mind. Something happened in her childhood, a very traumatic event that has haunted her the rest of her life. She said, you know, she has nightmares every single night of this event, and it's constant. It's a constant fear. They're then on a car ride on the way to her grandfather's house, and she starts her voice up, and they're like, no, you know, talk your normal voice. And she's like, "See, I'm like so used to whenever a camera is on, like turning on this persona, like this this person that isn't really me. I'm not used to being myself, Paris, on camera. I'm used to the Paris that, you know, is known all over the world. And I thought that was really, really, you know, unique how she, well, not unique, but just crazy. Could you imagine, like, your whole, basically, life? I mean, ever since you were 18 years old, you've been in the spotlight, and that was in, like I said, guys, like the early 2000s. We're in 2020. Just having this, like, other persona that's not even really you. When they get to her grandfather's house, Paris is showing the director of the documentary these pictures that she made for her grandfather. And it's pictures of her whole family, you know, just basically everybody in her family. And she's showing them, and, you know, it's pictures of her family with Nancy Reagan. There's a picture with Elizabeth Taylor. And she just talks about these unexpected, you know, or not unexpected, these unrealistic weight that her mom had put on her to be. And she said it just wasn't her. It never was her. That she just wanted to be Paris. She wanted to be herself. And because of who her family was, she always felt that she couldn't be herself. Because she felt like if she was herself, then her family, you know, would definitely not be down with it, and they weren't. We'll get to that. So at this point, they're showing some of the camcorder, like old school camcorder type deal, home movies of Paris. And they let you know that her father, Rick, who is not in the documentary, he's not, Kathy Hilton is, and she says that, you know, Rick is just very private and prefers to, like, stay in the background. That's his comfort zone. That's where he prefers to be. And she says that early on, her dad created a nickname for her, and it was Star. She was the first child. He was so excited to have Paris. She was just such this beautiful, beautiful child. I mean, like, oh my goodness, beautiful child. They would dress Paris up and do her makeup, and Kyle Richards, if you're familiar with the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Kyle Richards is her aunt, and she talks about, you know, just how beautiful she was, and she would come over to Kyle's house, and Kyle would do her makeup and just dress her all up. Like, Paris loved it from a very young age. She loved the camera. Now, what is very interesting to me is that in the 70s, they show a clip from 1970 where her mom was a child actress. And she says, you know, how her mom did not want that for her kids. She did not want them to act. She did not want them to be in the spotlight at all. And I find that just very interesting that Kathy was, you know, a famous childhood from a baby. Like, she literally was like a baby, looked like the first Gerber baby, all the way up through her childhood. Like, I just find it interesting that that's not what her mother wanted, but she did not. Her mother said that she just didn't want Paris in that world. And like I said, Paris was the first child. Rick and Kathy had Paris when they were 19 years old. Well, Kathy was 19 years old. And Kathy says that they always loved the city of Paris, and that's why they named her Paris. They wanted a unique name, and they loved Paris, so that's why she's named Paris. Now, Kathy starts to talk about the children, like Rick's sisters and brothers. And this is where she lets us know that Rick was not interested in being in the documentary. Like I said, he's very private, Well, Kathy says that there was 8 children. Of the 8, the first 5 got millions of dollars, and then the youngest 3 did not. That would have been Rick. Rick was one of the younger 3, so he did not get any of the money. So Rick and Kathy worked. They worked. They had like antique shops and different stuff like that, but they worked. They did not get the millions of dollars that were given to the other Hilton children. at this point, this is where they introduce you to Nikki Hilton, which is not only Paris's sister, but once you watch the documentary, you really truly see how close they are. They are extremely, extremely close. They remind me a lot of me and my sister Samantha with their closeness, just because me and Samantha are really close in age. I love my other sisters dearly, but me and Samantha are very close in age, and we've always had like this bond, like inseparable bond, and you can just tell that Paris and Nikki have that as well, and it's just so beautiful to watch. But Nikki says something that just stuck with me. She said, you know, that Paris has this brand of being so glamorous, and it's just so funny because she says that she's really not. She's just like this chick that wants to stay home and like do arts and crafts and like just hang out, and you know, Nikki literally says she's like a boy. And I just find that so funny, because if you are familiar with Paris at all, she is known. I mean, one of the first real boyfriends I had was obsessed with Paris Hilton. Thought she was the most beautiful woman in the world. And as far as I know, he probably still is like that to this day. I mean, everybody that I knew back in the early 2000s thought she was just the most beautiful, most glamorous, like new age Marilyn Monroe. That her sister Nikki says, you know, that she's never done any of these interviews or anything like this, but she had to do it for this documentary in order for it to be authentic, because she is the person who knows Paris the most out of anybody in the world. So then they start to talk about Paris's love for animals. Now, of course, she does have dogs. She has Pomeranians, Chihuahuas. She loves animals. And they start to talk about how her mom was really shocked that Paris, you know, was in the spotlight, and that's what she chose to do, because she always thought Paris would be a veterinarian, because Paris was always so obsessed with animals. They said that she, you know, hid a goat on their grandfather's property, and she also let a monkey out loose in a Waldorf hotel, which, if you're familiar with the Waldorf, it is like a bougie ass hotel. So they were all really shocked, you know, when she went into the spotlight, because they all figured she would do something to do with animals. And that was something that Paris and her dad, you know, enjoyed together. They do show clips of her and her dad at a zoo, and her and her dad just shared this infectious love for animals, and that her and her father's relationship just seemed to be just so pure. Now, at this point in the documentary, we go back to Paris's home, and they are showing her pack to travel for a minute. Like, she's going to all these different countries and all this different stuff. She's got to bring all these different baggies full of different charging ports for different countries, because if you don't know, different countries use different charging, like their outlets are different. So she has all of this stuff, all of these clothes. I'm talking about racks and racks and racks of clothes. And she's just like absolutely frazzled. And she talks about how she travels 250 days out of the year. She has 19 product lines coming out with the skincare brand. In the documentary, they show the launch of the skincare brand. Her perfumes are amazing, by the way. One of my favorite perfumes in the world are by Paris Hilton. I mean, she's a mogul. She's an icon. She's absolutely a bitch boss, period. And someone that I definitely look up to. If you do not look up to Paris Hilton, then you're just lying to yourself, because if you want to be successful at anything, then you have to look up to Paris Hilton. She is just that bitch boss, just like Kylie Jenner. I think one of the main reasons why people hate her so much is because they envy her. Because there's literally no other reason. Like, she is just such a boss. Paris also lets you know at this point that her perfumes, her fragrances, have done $3 billion in sales. And she also lets you know that her goal is to be a billionaire. and that she will not stop until she is a billionaire. And when I found this out, I was like, are you joking me? Are you sincerely telling me that Kylie Jenner became a billionaire before Paris Hilton? That is insane. Paris Hilton has been, you know, in the spotlight since I was like, well, that would have put me at 13 in 2003 when The Simple Life was on. So, dear Lord, I'm about to be 31 years old and she still hasn't become a billionaire. That is like, wow. Like, that just shows you, like, I don't know, man. That's just crazy, like how good the makeup industry does. That should tell you a lot right there. I mean, I had someone in my comments the other day, this is completely off topic, so if you want to skip ahead, go ahead. But I had someone in my comments on Instagram, I believe, the other day ask me how much I've spent on makeup. I'm like, girl, I don't even know how I would begin to add that up, but it's a lot. It's a lot because nobody sent me no makeup yet. Now, like we said, she is the first influencer, meaning that she is sent all kinds of stuff, jewelry, clothes, shoes, whatever, because people are just hoping that she takes a photo and posts it on her social media. That is part of being an influencer, is to influence. That's what you're doing. And also part of influencing, which this is one part that kind of gets me, because I believe that influencers will sometimes like stop. They'll just start in, you know, showing you whatever. That's never going to be me. If I don't believe in a brand, I'm not showing it, period. Period, poo. But Paris also mentions that she's never been photographed, ever been photographed in the same thing twice. Never. That's just absolutely insane to me. I'm like, really? People don't expect her to have a washing machine and wash her clothes and wear them again? Like, what the hell? Now, at this point, this is where they show her traveling, and she's traveling all over the place. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you all where all she traveled in this documentary. She traveled several times, but she gets there and there's just swarms of paparazzi, swarms of people. And there's these two cute little fans that are there. And as soon as Paris gets there, and I just found this just so awesome. As soon as she gets there, she's like, gets the security. She's like, I want you to pull them over here. And it's her two fans. And this is when she, you know, says that her fans call themselves the Little Hiltons. And she says, quote, I feel less alone when my little Hiltons are there, end quote. And I just find that sad, honestly, but also just really humble. And just, Paris just seems so humble, so kind, so genuine in this documentary. You can just really tell that she's really being her real self. And the only other documentary that I've seen that I can compare, on YouTube anyway, that I can compare this genuineness to is the documentary for Gigi Gorgeous. Like, they were really truly being themselves. You can tell that it wasn't scripted. You can tell that this is like their actual verbiage. If you haven't watched Gigi Gorgeous's documentary, then you have to, because it's amazing. So then they are talking about Paris being, you know, on the spotlight and paparazzi and all this. And Paris is like, you know, I'm not scared per se of the paparazzi, but she said they do make me nervous. And the reason why is because there has been like brawls over a picture of Paris Hilton. And at this point, they do show a clip from back in the day of these photographers like actually fist fighting over a picture of Paris Hilton. And one of her managers, I'm not exactly sure what kind of manager he is, he says that back when The Simple Life happened, Paris was at this like huge peak of fame, and pictures of Paris Hilton were going for $50,000 to $1 million at the time. And they ask him, well, what does that look like, when people are getting paid that for a photograph of someone? He says, quote, "What does it look like? When you have people knowing they would make $1 million for a photograph, it's war," end quote. And you guys, that is so freaking scary to me. Like, I don't know, I would probably panic if I knew a picture of me was worth that. I probably wouldn't even leave my dadgum house. I'd be so dadgum scared, if I'm being really real with you guys. So at this point, you see Kim Kardashian West. She makes her appearance. Of course, if you did not know, back in the day, before Kim Kardashian was Kim Kardashian West, she was Paris Hilton's assistant. And she started to be photographed quite a bit with Paris after Paris and Nicole Richie, like, I don't know if they had a falling out. I don't really know what happened, but they were on The Simple Life together. And then they weren't seen together at all. And she started to be seen with Kim Kardashian. And at the time, Kim Kardashian was her assistant, literally Paris Hilton's assistant. And Kim says that she really does thank Paris, because Paris really showed her the ropes and taught her, what to do and helped her. And she said that she, does think of Paris as the first, to really make being yourself something, a career, entertaining people by being you. Paris Hilton created that. And that is really what an influencer is supposed to be, is just you being yourself, or this character that you've created, or whatever. Different influencers are different. Some of them have created this character, and then some of them are their real, genuine selves. I mean, people talk shit about Trisha Paytas all the time, but come on now. When you see that girl crying on the kitchen floor, you cannot say that you've not started crying, pitched a fit through things, and cried on your kitchen floor when a guy's, treated you like shit. So I just think it's genuine. I think it's awesome. They asked Paris, how did this make you feel to have all of these people, taking your photograph and wanting to be near you and all this, that, and the third? And she's like, I loved it. I loved the attention, and I loved all the love. At least she thought that was love. She really thought that these people actually were in love with her. And they show clips of Paris talking to the paparazzi, and she's just so sweet. She's showing them her little roller shoes back in the day, and she said that was her dream, was to be followed by the paparazzi. And when it started happening, she was like, yes. Along with her being the first person to make social media and influencer a thing, she was also the creator of a selfie. I mean, the first time I ever heard of a selfie was, from Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton created that being a thing. It wasn't a thing until after Miss Paris Hilton. And Paris even says in the documentary many times, she says, I feel like I created a monster. She said, I feel like, I'm the one who started all this camera stuff and pictures and, always being dressed perfectly. And, she said that she meant to present herself that way, that she always wanted to look perfect, and she was obsessed with it. She was obsessed with always being dressed perfectly, and, always, because she knew that she was going to be photographed. She knew that she was going to be in magazines. She knew that this was going to happen. At this point, she's in a hotel room. She's out of town, and it's, her manager has told her, Paris, you have to be up by 8 o'clock in the morning. And at this point, it's already 12:30 in the morning. She's already not going to be getting a lot of sleep. You know what I'm saying? And she's just like, oh, this is going to be horrible. And because she has to be ready by 8 o'clock in the morning, which, I know doing my own makeup and hair, how long that takes. It takes hours when you've got to, be camera photographed ready with flash and everything else. So she then starts to talk about her sleep and her nightmares and things such as this. And she's like, you know, I have insomnia. I'm so scared to go to bed. And this is where she introduces her nightmares. Now, keep this nightmare in mind because this will be important later on. Her nightmare is she's sleeping in bed and these two people come into her room and they have handcuffs and they tell Paris, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. And they kidnap her. And she tries to run away. She can't get away. They capture her and they take her. That is the nightmare that she has. So the next morning when she wakes up to get ready, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning. She wakes up to get ready, to be ready by 8 o'clock. And she's crying in the makeup chair and she says, you know, I had a nightmare again last night and I was just so scared. It was so realistic, you know, and she said, I just kept trying to run and I couldn't get away. They kept catching up to me. So yeah, keep that in mind, of these nightmares, because like I said, it is going to be important later in the breakdown. Next in the documentary, Paris is in New York City. She's there visiting her sister. She was there like 72 hours, they mentioned in the documentary. And they start talking about Paris having kids. And Paris says, you know, I've always thought about having kids. But she says, you know, I just don't know. I'm not, you know, I don't know if it's for me or not. And Nikki says, you know, if you wanted it, if you wanted kids, if you wanted marriage, you'd make it happen. You always make what you want happen. Da, da, da. And they do mention in the documentary that Paris does have her eggs frozen, which I think is a really smart idea because in my personal opinion, Paris is just such a, like I said, a bitch boss. If she wanted to have kids, she don't need no man to have kids. Paris has got this shit. So at this point is where they start talking about the sex tape. And her sister Nikki is talking about how, you know, when it happened, they were living in one of the hotels in New York City, and that the New York Post and the New York Daily News would be delivered on the doors, like in front of the door of the hotel rooms every morning. And it was on the cover of the newspapers for weeks. And Nikki says that she would wake up every single morning and go and flip the newspapers over so her parents and Paris didn't have to see it. Because, of course, it was so upsetting for Paris. Now, keep in mind, you guys, this was a private moment between two people. Also, keep in mind that Paris was 18 years old at the time. This was a grown-ass man. They also show a clip of him being on, you know, a news channel, and he's saying, you know, people are saying that, you know, her eyes weren't fully dilated and da-da-da, and you couldn't see the whites in her eyes, but this was a video of two consenting adults, and he also then lets you know, like, where he has the video posted and all this. Like, he seems like such a freaking skis ball. Like, what a dick. Like, him just saying that shows that he never cared about Paris. He used Paris to get what he wanted, and he got it and he left. And Paris even says in this part, she says, I feel like I was electronically raped. And she said, no, people were not on my side. She said, people literally thought that I did this to get famous. And that wasn't the case at all. This is when the Simple Life started, after the sex tape came out. Kathy Hilton says that she spent most of her time in bed during that time. She was just devastated that this had happened. He portrayed himself to be like this great guy that loved her so much. But like Paris says, she said, you know, at the time when I was with him, I, you know, was just so, I had so much trauma, which you will find out why she was just so traumatized during this time and why she ran after the first person who showed her any type of quote unquote love, if you can even, you know, whatever. So this is when they start talking about, of course, her trust issues with men. And she says that, you know, she has trust issues with everybody, which we'll find out why that is later. But that after this sex tape happened, like her, you know, issues with men got even worse. Like she did not trust them at all. So in this particular scene that we're talking about here, she's actually putting out spy cams in her house because her new boyfriend is coming to stay at her house while she goes to an event. She says she's not ready for him to be at an event. So he's going to be in her home alone while she's at the event. And she doesn't trust men. And so she puts up these spy cams. She goes to the event. Kathy Hilton, she then says at this point in the documentary that between the ages of 13 and 15, there was just a change in Paris. She completely changed, and she was just such this sweet young girl, and then all of a sudden, boom, something switched in Paris. She said they couldn't control her, that she was just wild. She was sneaking out of the house. She got a fake ID. She was going to the clubs, and they were living in New York City at the time. So, you know, she just became this huge, like, socialite in the club scene, like, very early on. And her mother was not, I repeat, not having it. Also, Paris had dreams, like I said, of being a model, and she was obsessed with, like, Betsy Johnson and things like that. And she had dreams, and, you know, she was determined to live her life the way she wanted to, and nothing that her mom or dad said was going to stop her. She was going to live her life however the hell she wanted to. Kathy then says something that also stuck with me in this documentary, and that was, she says that fear is the most dangerous emotion of all, greater than love, greater than sadness, greater than anything. Fear. She said fear will make you do some things that you never thought you would do. So this is where we're going to get into a really important part of the documentary, where we start to talk about this trauma that occurred in Paris's life when she was 17 years old. So her parents had enough. They couldn't handle her anymore. So they started sending her to these emotional growth schools. Now, Paris was sent to several. She would escape. The first one, Paris says that she escaped, her and another girl escaped, and they got caught. And the director of the place, like, beat the hell out of them for trying to escape in front of everybody else, and told everybody, you know, if you try to escape, this is what's going to happen to you. Then she said she was placed in, like, the worst of the worst of the worst. She said, you know, at the end of it all, she begged and begged and begged to just stay home. She said, I will never go into a club again. Please, please, please do not make me go back there. But her parents weren't having it. They were not having it. They were like, absolutely not. You're getting sent to another one. Like, absolutely freaking not. She said because of this, she lost the ability to trust anybody. She didn't trust anyone, even her parents. Now we're going to fast forward to Mykonos, Greece, where her and her boyfriend Alex go on vacation in the documentary. She hadn't been on a vacation since she was 15 years old. It was desperately needed. She goes on this great vacation, and she talks about how, you know, she just needed to relax, and how she just needed to relax, and she wished she could just, you know, fully trust men, and she, you know, loves to be in love and just wants that so badly. They also talk about, you know, her not being married, and, you know, they ask her, you know, are you afraid to grow up or whatever? And she says, yes, I am. She said, I know that I'm grown up. She said, but I have this fear of, like, truly growing up. Like, I do, yes. Then they start talking about her DJing and how all this started. And she said it's always, you know, music has always been like a passion of hers, and DJing she fell in love with. She said you literally, like, run the room. Like, you run the whole mood, like what everybody's vibing with in the room, which I can get that. I can definitely see that. And then if you've ever watched her on her channel, DJ, like, she's super duper talented. But unfortunately, in a show in Brazil in 2012, someone took a picture of her sound guy, like, coming up to cut the volume down. People screenshotted that and it went everywhere of people saying, oh, she doesn't control it. She's not the one doing it. And she said the guy was literally up there for like 2.5 seconds, just literally cutting the volume down. And that whole entire, rumor just spread like wildfire. That picture went absolutely viral. So she said she really has to, prove herself. So she gets this gig for Tomorrowland in Belgium. So if you're not familiar with Tomorrowland, it is like the festival. Like, it is the festival. It is the festival of all festivals. Like, when Paris walks out on the stage for this gig, it is a sea of people. Literally as far as the eye can see of people. And she goes with her boyfriend Alex, and she's doing all these interviews and things. She's really nervous. You can definitely tell it in the documentary that she is super duper nervous. And, he's like, you're not paying no attention to me. You're leaving me places, like being super duper insecure. In my personal opinion, he was being very insecure. And she's like, please do not do this right now. I'm about to go on stage. Please don't make me nervous. And he's like, well, you don't have to do these things. You just do them to, like, leave me. And she's like, no, I don't do them to leave you. I have to do these things. I can't not do these things. Like, and of course, I'm sure if you've heard of this documentary at all, then you've heard of the argument that did happen. They do get into this argument, and honestly, he was being a little brat. He starts to, like, storm out of Tomorrowland right before she's about to go on set. And you guys, like, when I tell you guys, there were millions of people there. Like, it was the most people I've ever seen at any one place. And he's, like, just freaking out on her. Like, it's crazy. And she's like, take his bands. He's out of here. Get him the hell out of here. And she takes his artist wristbands. And in the next scene, she's back home, and you see all of these computers and things, and they're like, what are you doing? And she's like, I have to get a new computer. Anytime I break up with anybody, I have to get a new computer because they always threaten me, for my passwords or whatever. So I always have to get a new computer because I'm always so scared that they're going to, like, sell my information or whatever. So also you find out when she's back home that her and Alex broke up, obviously. But her gig at Tomorrowland went absolutely amazing. And also at this point, Paris does tell you about, other boyfriends and them being, physical with her, and how with one of the laptops, it was like all busted to shit. And she says that one of her ex-boyfriends, like, slung it at her because she was, like, on the laptop, like, trying to ignore him because it was, like, so awkward. And he, like, picked up her laptop and slung it, like, because he wasn't getting attention. And I can see, like, how guys would get that way with her, probably because they were intimidated by her success. It would be really hard to date if you were Paris Hilton. You have to think about it. If you're that successful, you know what I'm saying? So if you're that successful, it's going to be really hard for you to be able to have a, I'm not going to say normal relationship, so because every relationship is different, but it would be really, really hard to have a relationship. You know what I'm saying? That was substantial. This is when they share with you of Paris being taken in the night. So it's Paris, her sister Nikki, and one of their mutual friends. And Nikki arrives at Paris's New York apartment, and she's like, hey, what are you all talking about? And Paris is like, do you remember that one random school? And Nikki is like, oh yeah, the one in Utah. And she said, yeah. She said, do you remember that night? And she said, well, I remember that there was a takedown in the works. And she said, I just remember, you know, being in bed that night and just hearing you scream bloody murder. And then I remember, and this is all Nikki talking, by the way. Nikki says she remembers then the next morning, like waking up at the breakfast table and her parents are like smiling, and that they told them that Paris had went to boarding school. So what actually happened, Paris is in bed. So you got to put yourself in this position. Okay, so just put yourself in these shoes. You're in bed. It's the middle of the night. You are absolutely 1000% asleep. No part of your body's awake, okay? And these two grown-ass old men, you know, not old men, but like older men, come in your room and take you in the middle of the damn night. And you see your parents in the hallway, and they do nothing. They do absolutely nothing. Now you tell me, would that mess you up or would that mess you up? Because it would mess me the hell up. I'm just here to say. So they had put her in Provo Canyon School, which is one of those like behavioral schools or whatever. And Paris says that this was the worst of the worst. This was the worst place they had ever sent her. And there was no escape in there. There was this huge fence with barbed wire. And she said basically all day long, you sat in a chair and you stared at the wall. And if you stopped staring at the wall, they would beat the hell out of them with rulers. And she said they would drug them all up with all these pills. And Paris said she started to feel herself like becoming like a zombie. And so she says, you know, that she figured out a way that she didn't have to take the pills. But she said the problem is that everybody told on everybody snitched, and somebody had told on her. And when they found her pills in a napkin in a trash can, they went to Paris and they put her in solitary confinement, where they took this underage kid's clothes off and put her in a room naked for 20 hours. And she said she was freezing, she was scared, and she said the only thing that kept her sane in there was thinking about how successful she was going to be when she got out. And she said when she got out when she was 18 years old, she was so excited and happy to get out of there. And she said that she was never going to ever let her parents do this to her again or put her through something like this again. Paris says that she was in Provo Canyon for 11 months before she turned 18 and she got out. And this is where the David LaChapelle photo came from. I'll have it on the screen right now. And he had called Paris and he was like, hey, can we shoot at your grandfather's house? And she's like, sure. So they sneak into her grandfather's house, and she said, you know, she's posing or whatever. So then David LaChapelle is like, fuck you. And she's like, fuck you. And it was like a spontaneous picture. I think it was really good. And this is when everything for Paris started. That's literally all people were talking about was Paris Hilton during this time after the David LaChapelle photo. She was just so traumatized still afterwards. And so all she did was focus on her success. She focused on nothing else but her success. But also, because she was traumatized, this is when she met, you know, her ex who made the sex tape and all of this. And she was just looking for love in all the wrong places. And she says, you know, that she found the absolute worst person she could have ever gotten with, you know, during this time. She also says because of what happened to her at Provo Canyon School, she wants to make sure that this never happens to any other kids. And this is where Catherine McNamara comes into play. She was a classmate with Paris as well at Provo Canyon School. And she talks about how these troubled teen industries started. And she also talks about how Provo Canyon is like this hub, and people who work there have started their own schools as well. So they've started to branch out, and there's all these sister organizations as well. And it's just this huge industry, and they're all just horrible to these kids. So at this point, you are introduced to Paris's therapy group. Now, these are all girls who were in Provo Canyon with Paris at the same time as Paris. You meet Paris's roommate at the time. You meet a couple other girls who were there as well. And then you meet Jessica, that's the only name of one of them that I'm going to name because she was Paris's like best friend at Provo Canyon. And they're all talking about all of the things that they've suffered from because of that. PTSD, they don't trust anyone, they all have nightmares, they all are suffering all of these things because of Provo Canyon School. And so they are breaking the silence, which is the whole campaign that Paris spoke out about, which I think is amazing. Also, it's very important for me to note that Paris's parents did not know about her experience at Provo Canyon School either. So I do think it's very important for me to let you guys know that Paris does go to her mother in the documentary and tells her mother about how Provo Canyon School affected her, shows her the picture that she took with her therapy group, and you know what they're speaking out against this Provo Canyon School. I think that it's super duper scary. Also, not only does, Provo Canyon School take children, but I think it's super duper scary because not only does Provo Canyon School take children, but they take 9-year-olds now. 9-year-olds, oh my gosh. It's just so scary because of course, this is going to affect relationships and trust and everything else because you literally let your kid get kidnapped in the middle of the night and don't explain anything. Like, oh my gosh, I just couldn't imagine that. So, yeah, they do introduce her therapy group. They all keep in touch, especially Paris and Jessica, her best friend that was there. And I think this opens up a lot of information on Paris and questions that people may have had. And, maybe if anyone had questions about her behavior or anything like that. I think it is a beautifully done documentary, 100%. Again, I do think that it is just as good as Gigi Gorgeous's This Is Everything was because it's real. And when you're really, really real and truly you in the documentary, it shines through. It literally is the most powerful message that could ever be done. And I highly, highly, highly recommend this documentary for everyone to watch. Again, it is linked down below. So yeah, you guys, I do hope that you did enjoy episode 10 of Beauty and Documentary Breakdown, where we broke down the This Is Paris documentary and this makeup look right here. Everything that I did use on my face will be linked down below, as well as the documentary again and all of my social media. I do love you guys so very, very, very much. And until next time, my loves, bye.